Hey everyone, I was fortunate to catch up again with James Raggi from Lamentations of the Flame Princess. We talk about LotFP situation on the market, publishing, sales results, but also about James's adventures and his design ideas. To not prolong this intro, I will now shortly speak in Polish and then interview will start. Cześć wszystkim! Miałem okazję po raz kolejny porozmawiać z Jamesem Raggim, czyli właścicielem Lamentations of the Flame Princess. Wywiad dotyka szerokiego spektrum, od wyników sprzedażowych, strategii wydawniczej, ale i designie przygód takich jak choćby Death Frost Doom czy Tower of the Stargazer. Mam nadzieję, że wywiad przypadnie Wam do gustu. Okay, the recording has started, so hello James, thank you for doing this. It's really great to see you again, and I'm happy to host you again on this interview part of my channel. So if we can start with your short introduction again as it was last time, then it would be great, and we'll jump straight to the questions.
Okay, I'm James Edward Raggi IV. I'm the publisher of Lamentations of the Flame Princess game, based out of Finland. We've been doing this since 2009 and still going. It's, see in the banner, mind-bending and merciless role-playing. Very traditional role-playing rules with a lot of horror movie and heavy metal and weird influences.
Okay, so we talked last year, and it was, I think, before your book reveal of 2020. I think it was even the day of the stream that you held. But I wanted to ask first, how is it going at Lamentations office since then, since 2020 release and now 2021, and how would you summarize the overall success of 2020 and 2021 in terms of sales?
Well, the 2020 was amazing as far as that release goes, because I made the whole, we got to save the company and blah, blah, and we got a ton of support, ton of orders. Thank you, everyone. And then the follow-up didn't happen. The plan was those books were released in July. And then we were supposed to have a couple more books come out in October. And that was supposed to be Terror in the Streets and Book of Antithesis. And Book of Antithesis, as just about every Lamentations book is, so I'm not singling them out generally, but that didn't get done on, when I was hoping. So, the longer there is between releases, the slower and slower the sales get. So then when Antithesis was getting completed, there were all these other projects that were also coming to a state of completion. And it created one of those big business decisions. Everything's going to depend on this. Do I release a few books at one point and then a couple months later release some more books, or do I just do them all at once? Hope that people are going to drop a lot of money and save a little bit on shipping for doing it one time versus, 2 or 3 times over a course of a few months. And while I was dealing with that, the post office here raised their rates again for parcels. So suddenly, stuff that, a couple years ago was, I think, 40 euros to ship a 2-kilo parcel to the US had increased to 60 and now was going to be 100, I think, euros. And so I panicked, but this past July I was able to get a bunch of new shipping deals, including a special contract with the post office through a special service. So, a lot of this is now half of what the shipping price was before the price increase for these other vendors, of course, depending on where you are and how much you're ordering. I mean, if you're ordering 5 kilos of books, it's it is going to be a little more expensive. But so even though I understand a lot of people still have sticker shock the first time they go in to order, and it's like, this stuff's coming from Finland, it's going around the world, and it's a lot cheaper than it was just 6 months ago. So So
yeah, so it was a meme, like shopping from Lamentations direct store, that you had to be in debt to cover the post office, in the fan base. But right now it's a very important news that it's better now, right?
Yeah, and especially the special post office rates going to Northern Europe, especially the prices are way down depending on how much you're ordering. Of course, if you order a lot, the prices might be a bit more, but 11 euros to ship a decent sized parcel to Germany. I think it's 14 to Poland. If we want to make a real boring interview while I look that up, going to Poland, up to 3.5 kilos could be as little as 14 euros shipping to Poland. So,
that's better than it was, definitely.
Much better than it was.
Better.
But of
and
course,
I can say that it's also faster, because this year release, I got my books faster than it was last year.
And that's with the post office. We've also got DHL. We've also got UPS. Depending where you are, one's going to be cheaper than the other, but they're pretty fast options. Because it used to be with the old method, taking everything to the post office and shipping it over the counter, which is what I did until this past July with these parcels, which seems insane now. But the things could take 2 weeks to a month to get places. And now there's sometimes I'm putting the info in, DHL will come and pick up the parcels at no charge, and sometimes a little as a week later, anywhere in the world. And that's freaky. Or someone ordered something express UPS from the US. They I think, what was it? I had to go, the UPS drop-off points like across the street. So I dropped it off, and like 3 days later, delivered in the morning. It's like, oh my God. Why? And I think to myself, why didn't I get these deals years ago? And I suppose I could have gotten the deal through the post office for their special parcel rates, but like DHL and UPS before this year, they wouldn't return my emails or my calls. So I'm guessing, this is just pure guesswork, that the pandemic at the time that I was making my inquiries to them, that maybe business was down from the pandemic, and they're like, oh, this person's going to ship, okay, that'll keep things moving. So I don't know.
Okay, so end 2021 in terms of sales, for now, is it good compared to last year?
Good to compared to, well, I didn't go with the everything's panic, save the company. So
yeah, that's true.
And last year I had made a deal with my printer that I wouldn't have to pay the printing bills until the books arrived in the US. So I was able to start the sales for the US store and the EU store at the same time. Mm-hmm. This year I wasn't able to do that. So it's looking like, let's see, last year was, okay, I'm going to look up some numbers just so I'm accurate. Yeah, last year was the second biggest year in terms of gross sales in the history of Lamentations. And this year looks like we're going to be fourth best year out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, out of the 13 full years, calendar years we'd have been in business, this is going to be the fourth biggest in terms of gross sales.
Okay. So that's actually good. Like this is good. Yeah. So
and then once the stuff gets to the US and the direct order from the US store, I think there'll be a bit of a pickup. Plus, then the stuff will go through retail. So I'm very, very hopeful about 2022. Then maybe also we'll start doing conventions again, and that's traditionally been a big chunk of income that we haven't had the past couple of years.
Okay, we have to work on getting you here to Poland for some conventions. So yeah, definitely. Okay, so skipping leaving this topic about sales, I wanted to ask you, because so far I have read and reviewed 5 of the new books, and I have to say that this year brought us some books that are adventures, and books that are very kind of Call of Cthulhu type, like they are there.
Okay.
We have investigation, murder mysteries, and so on. And also like Terror in the Streets, especially. I really like this adventure. I think it's a greatly designed adventure by Kelvin. But I think it can be easily ported to not into the OSR game, but also into, for example, Call of Cthulhu game.
Okay.
It's very, very good in these terms. So I wanted to ask, like, was this a strategy? Because In a Deadly Fashion has it as well. Like, it can also be ported into a different mechanic. That will we get more of this, was this an idea that this year we will have a more generic book, not strictly placed in the old school D&D genre? I don't know.
I think the issue is, and I was asked about this recently, and so I've been thinking about it. It's basically how the projects get approved, because people send me a pitch, and then I judge the pitch, and we'll go back and forth. Well, what if this and that, until we have an idea? And I think these more open-ended things make for better pitches, because if you have an idea for a dungeon, what's the pitch?
Yeah.
That you can have the best playing dungeon ever, but unless it has some spark of an idea, that it won't get past the pitch stage. But what do I do about that? I mean, if someone says, oh, I'm going to make a dungeon, and I say okay, and then they make a dungeon, it's well, it's a hell of a thing at that point to say, oh God, I hate this, you have to change everything or I'm not publishing it. So that's
you would have to have the ready the full project to review this, actually.
Yeah. So it's not an intentional strategy to get away from traditional OSR type things. It is just, I think it's an artifact of the pitch process and the fact that I like things to be internally consistent within each adventure. And so I have to say, I mean, one of the many projects that I have in various states of completion, a couple of them are pure dungeon crawls, because I don't have to pitch them to myself. Although maybe I should, because then maybe something would actually get fucking done. But instead of just like, okay, this is great in note form.
But I have to say that a lot of people who are messaging me, they say that they are interested in, for example, in Terror in the Streets, because not all of them play OSR, but they like Lamentations products and they use them with different rule sets and different systems, and they like it that it's not so hard to take it to a different game. So
yeah, well, originally Lamentations wasn't supposed to be its own game. It was just supposed to be adventures and supplements. The problem was you can't get any industry attention or get stores to carry it if it's just generic adventures. So that's why there's a rule set in a game behind it. So if people are taking it and using it with other games, that's perfectly fine. I mean, that's
because generic usually sounds like you will have to do some work. Yeah, but if you have a rule set, then it's easier. Yeah. Okay. So continuing on this, I was recently interviewing Prince of Nothing, an author of Blockade of Dusk, and he had a very interesting thought, and that in previous years, Lamentations was like this all-stars cast, that people were publishing a very different products. And right now, like very, very different. Like Zach, Patrick, they had very different styles. And now we have more Lamentations last 2 years. What you have published is a consistent 17th century game. And like a lot of this is placed actually in 17th century somewhere. So I was thinking what you would say about it. Like, is this something that you are maybe right now having this setting being very much fleshed out, that you are maybe putting some attention to it, more attention to it, or is it just accident that recently you got?
Oh boy. How to dance around this topic. Well, it's basically it's the pitch process, and the fact that you were talking about the all-star cast. Shall we name names on that? That the band broke up, and so the people that had the stroke and the creativity to go beyond, my preferences, they're sort of not around anymore. So, but even so, I try to, when a writer sends me an idea, sends me the pitch, and it doesn't have anything to do with the 17th century, my goal is to, try to make it fit without changing the essence of what the author's trying and wanting to do. And even things like Red and Pleasant Land or Veins of the Earth, those take place in other places. Like Veins of the Earth can go under 17th century Europe just as easily as it could underneath the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah,
because it's some other place. Same thing with Red and Pleasant Land. It's this other dimension. So, Carcosa's another planet. So I don't have to be such a stickler with, this doesn't fit. What am I gonna do? I'm compromising. So it's So, but as far as the 17th century setting, I mean, there are some things like No Rest for the Wicked where it's kind of really baked in. But other things, it's just set dressing. It's just flavor. I mean, would Big Puppet be a problem to port to your favorite fantasy setting?
No, not. But for example, there are books like England Upturned, which is which is very good, and also Terror in the Streets, from this year. It has a very good setup with the 17th century Paris.
Yeah, well, that's. Yeah, those make the location part of the adventure. It's not just background dressing. It's not just, we got to pick a place to put it so we know what to name all the NPCs. So that's
okay.
That's that. Yeah, it's not a grand plan, but of course, my preferences are going to shape what gets chosen.
Okay. So I also, as a publisher, I wanted to ask you about the artist that you are choosing to have in illustrations in your books, because except for Kelvin Green right now, and I think Yannick Bouchard, you have that you are constantly working with in terms of art. You have many different artists that we could see across all the books, and personally, I love what we can find right now in A Deadly Fashion. It's, I think, the best art of this release for me. But I wanted to ask, what's the process of recruitment for the artists? Because are they writing to you, hey, I want to do a book, illustrate a book for you, or are you looking them up online?
I'm not looking anybody up online anymore. Okay. It's just my first instinct is to go to my regulars now. And then I have a folder of artists who've submitted stuff. And if, for example, right now, in the next couple of days, I have to find an artist because my regulars are all booked up. So I need to find someone else to do something. So I'm going to go to the folder of people that said, hey, I want to do art, because I'm in a position now where just randomly emailing strangers on the internet can turn out very badly. So it's... it's like recruitment. Like last year I put out the call for writers and artists, and then everything got delayed, and so I didn't follow up as I should have, or if everything had come out when it should have, I would have followed up when I should, but everything got delayed for months, and so of course now dealing with anything for the follow-ups, that's the story of Lamentations, delays. But I still have everybody's info and contact, put in a folder in my email. So when it's time, hopefully these people are still available and we can start getting the stuff done.
So, for example, when you have a book, when you have a pitch for an adventure, for a book, whatever, but are you thinking about combining a style of a certain artist with the book, or are you just taking who's available?
Well, it'll be a little bit of both. It's going to depend on the project, and you can't always tell from the pitch.
Was there any projects, for example, when you heard about when you read the pitch and thought about a certain artist that you wanted to have an art inside?
I think the Butchery of Agnes Gooder. I think that required like anatomical realism.
Yeah.
So that's going to limit the choice of artists that would be good for that project. Whereas, say, in A Deadly Fashion, there's a number of artists, I think, that could have made that work. I think Longmore did a spectacular job, so I'm glad that ended up with him. And it's the same thing for the 6x6x6 book. Some of that stuff works better because it's a more realistic style.
Especially the one with the spine going up. Like, yeah. This is the best, I think. Yeah.
Well, the one closer to the front with the tooth ejecting. That yeah. I hope, because people that order from Lamentations aren't going to be affected by it because they're used to that stuff. But I just imagine when this gets into game stores and people are like, "What is this 6? What?" You know, I hope a normal person just gets sick looking at this dental trauma picture.
Yeah, but going back to In a Deadly Fashion, like I already commented it, but the cow illustration, this is the best.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, that was done so long ago, I can't even remember whose idea it was, or if the artist just did it, or I'm not good at retaining details like that. But whoever that was, once I saw it, it's like, okay, iconic. Nobody that sees that picture is ever going to forget it.
My friend, when I showed him this picture, he told me, like, maybe this is weird. I don't know if I should be ashamed, but I have an idea for a campaign right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, very, very good. Very good. Yeah. Okay, so I would close this as the part of the Lamentations as a publisher, as James the publisher. I wanted to talk a bit about you as an adventure designer, because as we've spoken, I have read and played also a lot of your products during this year, 2021, and I have some questions. And first of all, because I read the anthologies and also reviewed them on this channel, and I also played the Frost Doom recently, played as a player for the first time. So, and I have to say that you, as an adventure designer, you have explored many different areas, many different styles of gaming. In your backlog, you have Funhouse Dungeon, Cosmic Horror, you have Hex Crawl, Classic Wizard Tower, and so on. And was this something that you were aiming when you were designing another product, that you want to explore different themes, different genres? Was this something that you want to achieve, to have a very vast portfolio of different styles?
Not so much. Some of them were intentional. Tower of the Stargazer and Weird New World were intended to go in the very first box set back in 2010. And so they were deliberately designed to be more classic style. Here's a wizard's tower. Here's a wilderness hex crawl. That was intentional. Doom Cave of the Crystal-Headed Children, that was the year after Better Than Any Man, and I thought, okay, I can't do that again for Free RPG Day. So
you did.
well, no, it's a lot smaller. It's a lot more contained. It's a dungeon. So that was an intentional choice to say, okay, this is going to constrain the scope of what's in here. So this will be a sane length for a free product. Because what was Better Than Any Man, like 80, 96 pages, something like that. Just insane. Tiny font. It's like, what was I thinking? I should have put that together and thought, oh, screw Free RPG Day. I should release this as a freaking paid adventure, but On the other hand, Better Than Any Man got so many new fans. So many. So it's hard to regret that too hard.
Yeah, but for example, Grinding Gear is a funhouse dungeon, I would say, like classical funhouse dungeon. You have I don't know if this is something that you were aiming for, but after Death Throws Doom, I read that people started to call this dungeon type after Death Throws Doom the Nega Dungeon.
Nega Dungeon.
And yeah. So
well, that name didn't come until much later, though. They weren't calling it that at the time. I mean, they were noticing that they were noticing the things that would lead to the Nega Dungeon label, but the actual Nega Dungeon label wasn't until years later. But for Grinding Gear, I mean, yeah, that was intention. It was intentionally doing a low-level type Tomb of Horrors. Lots of traps and puzzles and that sort of thing. So it's not an accident that it's like that. But I didn't have some grand plan. Oh, I did this and then that. Now I need to do this. It was just, okay, I'm excited about this idea and can push it through till it's done. And
do you have some favorite favorite genre of products that you like to do the most, or that you think of the most when you are thinking about something new?
Closed environment. Closed spaces, not necessarily strictly a dungeon, but something in a closed environment so the project doesn't get quite so out of control. Because one thing I've noticed, even with the reviews for the new stuff, people are noticing, oh, this could have been fleshed out more, that could have been fleshed out more, because they are, as you know, more open-ended kinds of investigations. So there's always places where, you can decide, oh, we can do another 100 pages on this shit. And the decision on more open-ended adventures, there's a decision. It's like, okay, we're just going to leave that there and cover the next bit. Whereas a dungeon, it's kind of bounded by its very nature. So you don't have to worry about those decisions so much. So it's easier to just define the scope of the project. You start with the map, and then the scope of the project if you're just doing a dungeon or a wizard's tower or something like that. So, yeah.
But speaking about, because you said this open-ended adventures, speaking of it, I notice also in your products that very often you are saying what will happen after. And this dungeon, this adventure has its consequences, and if players will take this action, this and this will happen. So the adventure can last after the book is closed. But this is something that is characteristic to Lamentations, in my opinion, because usually I see it in Lamentations products, not so often in other brands. So is it also something that you are paying attention when creating an adventure, or even when you are publishing something?
Yeah, I think I do. Yeah, I think I do suggest notes to that effect from people, because, I mean, if you're playing an adventure as a one shot, then that doesn't matter. But ideally, you're using these adventures as part of an ongoing campaign. And when you every session from an ongoing campaign should have the potential to affect the rest of the campaign. I've seen this criticism that Lamentations adventures will change a campaign. Well, it's like, yeah, what is the point of filler adventures that'll just be this closed contained thing that doesn't influence the rest of the campaign? Why bother putting it in the campaign then? What is the point of this adventure? It's like it's like watching, superhero TV shows that have season-long plots, and then they'll just have this episode that the big plot just stops, and you're fighting bank robbers that won't have any. It's just like, okay, we need 23 episodes this season. We've only got 21. Write some bullshit we can stick in around episode 12, and it's No. You put these adventures in, it's going to affect the rest of the campaign. Every adventure you go on should every adventure that player characters are involved with should have the potential to have the little tentacles reach out to the rest of the campaign. And this is only a problem if you have a planned campaign where before you even start, you've got a beginning and a middle and an end in mind. And I can't stand those kind of campaigns. The trajectory of a campaign should be affected by what happens along the way. Maybe the original goal is completely jettisoned halfway through because something happens and players decide, oh, well, we're going to go do this instead. And, we can leave the Dark Lord to rule the mountain lands over there because we think over here is more interesting now. And that
I can say that I was playing in a setting of England Upturned, and I placed going through Forbidden Otherworld somewhere on one of the hexes, and there you go. Like my players switched the world, so here you go, Civil War, bye bye. So
yeah, but it's also important though that the decisions the player makes, that things they decide not to engage with, ideally in an ongoing campaign, that decision will have consequences as well, because whatever was going on that the players would have had an opportunity to interact with and maybe stop, that's going to keep on going. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so I also, this is a very jumping into a different topic, but I thought because when you told about Tower of the Stargazer as a wizard tower, because you have a very specific approach when it comes to traps, and I actually like it because I have I think I have the same. So what's your take on the traps? Because I believe you told that you don't see a point of trap if it's not designed to kill or harm someone, but that you don't like the traps that are designed to slow people.
Well, it depends. It depends on what you're doing in the moment. Tower of the Stargazer, I think, is somewhat different than what I would do these days, because that was intentionally supposed to transition from really proper old school Dungeons and Dragons play into the weird. So it starts off with a poison trap on the door handle.
Yeah.
Now that's the first thing. But then it ends up potentially getting zapped through the telescope and all that stuff. And so it's, one is very mundane. The other one is just like, what is happening? And that was intentional. These days, it's not that I want to kill the players, but the field of adventure should be a legitimate challenge. The adventure should not be presented with the assumption that the players can win. It has to be made so the players can win, but there shouldn't be the assumption that they will. And if you're doing a big sandbox campaign, they might wander in a place that they're hopelessly outmatched. If you're putting your different adventures and locations in your sandbox, and your first level players just ignore all the opening stuff to just go explore, and they wander into a place that you need to be 6th or 7th level to really deal with properly, well, then they made the choice. That's a different thing than if you sit down to play and you're like, okay, this week we're doing this adventure. Then it would be a bit of a dick move to present something they can't survive. But yeah, it should be a challenge. But as far as killing the players, I mean, one thing I do in my adventures is that they're not combat heavy. And the problem is, with combat, especially for low-level adventures, and lots of Lamentation stuff is assumed to be low level, is that combat has a chance to bring the game to a screeching halt, even if the player characters win. If you're starting off with 8 hit points and you just had a combat and you're down to 4 hit points, you're going to be like, okay, let's go rest and blah blah blah. So So you don't want something to be so combat heavy that it's just fight, retreat, and rest. Fight, retreat, and rest. You need some. You need a. There. It needs to be not a stupid idea to continue on. And traps. It depends, because sometimes in the moment or in context, it needs to be nasty and a surprise. Other times, I think my preference these days is to really just present something that so obviously could be a trap. It's not a hidden panel. It's not a weighted floor tile or anything. It's just, there's a thing. It looks suspicious, doesn't it? And then let the players figure out, oh my God, is it a trap? Well, if it's a trap, what do we do? How do we? And if it's presented like that, they can also come up with plans where whether the trap goes off and whether or not they get hurt by it doesn't necessarily have to be handled by a die roll. It can be by the situation and what they're doing in the environment. And but it's got to make sense for what it is and where it is. For example, in the Wizard's Tower and Tower of the Stargazer, the wizard doesn't want visitors. He doesn't want people just wandering in. So, of course, the front door trap is going to very much discourage people from getting in. It's not going to be it's not going to be naughty you're disabled now. You now go learn your lesson. No, it's just like, somebody is going to try to gain entrance to my tower without permission. Fuck them. Kill them. So it just depends on the situation and what you're trying to do.
So speaking as well as, for the combat, I remember when we were playing The God That Crawls, that we actually dropped the god to 0 hit points, and we were like, we beat it, like we won. And then he started regenerating, and we were like, oh, so we actually cannot beat this guy.
So, you can. The god was defeated in the playtest.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to say how, because I don't want other people to just know how without thinking of it themselves, if at all possible. But they low-level characters got rid of the god, and then it was just a matter of, okay, we're alone in this maze now. Let's take our time and get everything. And it's like, And I didn't change the conditions that allowed that in the printed adventure, because it was clever, and it's bad refereeing to sabotage clever play.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah,
there's so much potentially very unfair in all of these adventures that when the players have a good idea, give them the fucking win.
Yeah, it's fun to win. So with a clever idea, yeah. But when we tried our muscle strength, like it was cool that we dropped this guy to 0 hit points, but then he started regenerating, and we had to start thinking actually.
Yeah.
So I asked this question that I will ask you right now to Kelvin Green, to Patrick Stewart, to Zarkov Kowalski, and what's the most boring or tough thing for you when you are designing an adventure? Because all of them usually said monster stats, and
monster stats I don't spend any time on. They're such nothing. It's just and then you see when you're playing through it how it works, and I for my judgment of playtesting is it doesn't have to show that the adventure will work. It just has to show that the adventure can work. Well, because they're not canned experiences where you're planning to, the players are going to go through this like a theme park ride. They're going to experience this here and that there, and it's more open than that. So it's impossible to do a playtest review that's going to capture everything. and it's futile to even try, and that would be soul killing. Like I did. The adventure that I've played the most before publication of mine was the Monolith from Beyond Space and Time.
And it's I have to say that I can see that, because I was shocked that I don't know if I have seen it for the first time, that actually author is saying to me what happened during the playtesting. So
yeah, but the thing is, though, that allows me to answer some more questions. The fact that I took that around the horn on the conventions in those days. But as far as the construction of the adventure, it didn't change much. It made clear where maybe I need to explain things more. But the fact that they all had very different experiences, and none of them resolved in exactly the same way. The experiences were never the same once they realized what the monolith was. So say, okay, what experience am I trying to create with this monolith? It's not going to be standardized. And I think that's one problem with playtest reviews. You're going to review all of the possibilities in an adventure based on your one playthrough of it. And if a single playthrough of an adventure can capture the essence of the adventure, it's kind of like you've done it wrong. Because even say Deathfrost Doom, which has a rather linear dungeon design, and there are certain tripping points that are going to create some commonality of experience, there's several different ways that can all resolve. It's not, it looks like on a read through, it looks like everything is going to end one certain way, but it's like, no, even when all hell breaks loose, there's several different ways out of the place without having to suffer any negative consequences. There are a couple more that have negative consequences attached, but you can still get out. One of the ways out, again, in the playtest, I hadn't anticipated at all, and and I still allowed it because why not? They were using the pieces of the puzzle that they had discovered in ways that I hadn't anticipated, and that's a good thing. So trying to tie all of that down to create like a really tight, focused, predictable, from the writer's perspective, adventure experience, that's awful. That's awful. I don't want that. I don't want it. I want to hear the wild stories of what happened when some group in the wild went through this, and to just be completely surprised at what happens.
Yeah, because what's the fun if you're writing an adventure that every single time should end in the same manner? So
yeah.
But as a Deathfrost Doom, one of my friends, he ran it 4 times now, and he told me that every single time it was a very different story. So
there you go.
So I can confirm. Yeah. And it was, and his 4 times was a different story than the one that we ran this year. So again, very different outcome depending on players' decision, timing, and etc. A lot of variables there. So you would say that playtesting is the hardest part for you?
That's it's not the hardest. Well, it's
Zarkov also mentioned that there are things that are hard and there are things that are tedious, and he mentioned that the tedious things are the hardest.
Yeah, if the playing is tedious, that's a problem. That's a big problem all on its own. The problem in the adventure design is once you have the core idea, you have to build an adventure that makes some sort of sense around it.
Yeah.
And something like Monolith, where everything is strange, that's not so much a problem. But if you're trying to place the adventure inside of an actual recognizable world, be it the 17th century Earth or something else, making sure that it all lines up and makes sense as a location, all the little details and things you have to mention for it to make sense internally, that gets tedious, especially when you realize that your assumptions aren't going to be the assumptions of the general public. So you got to explain shit that just seems obvious to you, and that's the worst.
Yeah. So I wanted to stick a bit with Defrost Doom because, again, like I said, I covered this module here on my channel, and also had a podcast on it with my friend who ran it for our group. And usually I don't do recommendations of adventures here on this channel because I just want to show people the stuff, what is inside, just to talk about what's inside, what's the adventure about, what's the product about, and for them to make their decision if they are interested in it. But with the Defrost Doom, I made an exception, and I highly recommended it. And I wanted to ask you a question, because why is Defrost Doom so different from it is, I would say, Defrost Doom and Monolith are the two most different adventures from you. And because even after all these years that Lamentations is on the market, it's still, I think, objectively one of the best modules that you guys have published. And when you were writing this adventure, when you were thinking about it, were you thinking that it would be such a hit, such a...
No, because that and No Dignity in Death and People of Pembrokeshire were ready at about the same time. And originally, I was trying to farm No Dignity in Death out to another publisher, because I thought, okay, these people will be able to get it out further. This is before I started the business. My idea was to get this one, No Dignity in Death. That's the good one. That's the masterpiece. That should go to this other publisher who can get it out there more. And then I'll just release this little dungeon, Death Frost Doom, myself, because what's that going to do? So that's how well I anticipate market interest. I was all excited about the Bumblebee Bandit and the Steam House, and it's like, oh, people are gonna lose their minds when they see this stuff. And then Death Frost Doom was just an old school dungeon.
So you were not paying a lot of attention to Death Frost Doom, or?
Well, I was paying attention, but that felt like something. Well, I guess here's the lesson. That felt like something that was more personal instead of something that I was presenting for public consumption. And maybe that's why the two projects turned out as they did, because No Dignity in Death hasn't gotten a fraction of the buzz over the years. And honestly, that's a 3-part adventure, and the second part of the adventure is it's a lot of setup and players observing, being narrated to before it's basically a single encounter. The first and third parts of the adventure are they're up to par, but the second part, I can see how that kind of falls down as actual gameplay. But yeah, I just thought, the more open-ended social adventure, multiple part, different environment kind of thing, I was just assuming that was going to be more appealing to the community at large, and then just the dungeon was going to be like a more niche, like the very core old school fanatics would be interested.
Yes. So when we were playing the Frost Doom, we our referee even played the song that you recommended to. It was a very, very different experience, I have to say. Also, the 10-year anniversary book, it has also a great illustration. I think one of the best that are in Lamentations from Jess Gordon. Really, really great art.
Is that the one on the throne?
Yeah.
It's
fantastic.
More than 1,000
words
for some reason.
So really, really great one. And I have to say, like, this adventure has a lot of substance and it's very climatic. It is very dense, and that's why I was asking, like, why this adventure is so different. So maybe it's because it's a personal thing from your side.
Well, remember the version you're doing, that was a rewrite by Zach. So it's not exactly the original version either. There are some key differences. I think the essence of what happens in the adventure is the same, but a lot of the details have changed.
Okay, I will have to run through this raw the Frost Doom that we got this year, so yeah. Then I will maybe compare. Okay, so sticking with the adventures, I also wanted to ask, because in your adventures, this is also something that I find characteristic of you, that you place some items that are almost impossible for players to figure out how they are working, and they have very strict and under very strict circumstances, they can basically turn the world or even erase the universe. And going back to the God That Crawls, there is the book. And I think it is a very good example. So I like it, but I also wanted to ask, what's the reason or idea behind placing such an item in your module? Because at first glance, it looks like maybe a lot of wasted effort, because almost nobody will ever figure it out or even pay an interest to it. But on the other hand, like, maybe these few people will find out how it will work and the story will go.
Yeah, well, the book, oh boy, it's been forever since I've looked at that one. That was the one, there's a few parts of it that are in the vaults there.
Yeah.
And it starts doing things when you bring them together. So stuff can start happening without the players realizing what's going on at first.
Yeah.
If I recall. So that, yeah, so it's not like the players not knowing what's going on is going to be a problem for making things actually happen. And then there's also the black disc in there. That the black disc does absolutely nothing except explode if you cast Detect Magic on it. But then the disc doesn't blow up. There's just an explosion around the disc. And when that happened with my players, when my players discovered that, they realized, oh my goodness, this is the perfect assassination tool for any wizard we don't like. Just ship it to them and see if they blow themselves up. That's
the most dick move.
Because what wizard, if they get this black disc, is like, oh, whoa, goodness, it must be magical. Let's check.
Awesome. Really great.
Yeah. And there's, what else? I think, was it in that? Did I put it in there, the book about poison that kills you?
I don't remember if it was there.
I think that was a God That Crawls. It might have been something later.
It had few such items, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, but there are things that it's like it's going to be deadly, perhaps deadly in the moment for the character using them, but then everyone else sees what happens and they've still got the item. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, sucks for Bob there, but look what we got now. And yeah, so.
Okay, so for you, for example, it's not a wasted effort, like placing such items inside.
But, well, no, it's not a wasted effort because
the book has a very long description. For it was a characteristic that in God That Crawls it had a very long description, and I thought that this is a neat idea, but if anyone will figure it out.
Well, remember, it's a neat idea, and so that's something that referees can take out of that, even if they never played the adventure. They can decide, oh, that book thing's an interesting idea. I'll place it over here in this other, adventure I'm running. And so, role-playing books, their only value is imagination, inspiration, and encouragement. It's nice as a publisher and an author if somebody actually plays it. But if it does anything to get, other people's own imaginations working in their own ways, then it's done its job. And so you have these strange things that almost nobody will ever find, but then it's special when someone does. When someone uses this thing that's kind of hidden away For example, in this one adventure that'll get done when the hell ever, it's this big 3-level dungeon I'm putting together, and there's one room that's going to have a full description. There's no way into it. There's no indication that it exists there. There's nothing in the rest of the dungeon that indicates this room exists. There's no way in there. There's no passage, no teleport in. It's just going to be in this, empty spot, where there's nothing else in the map, just surrounded by solid walls. There's a room in there with stuff in there. And I don't expect any players will ever get in there. Yet it's still going to be there. It's still going to have stuff. Just because you never know, players have access to magic in these games.
Yeah.
And you don't, and especially with Lamentations putting all this crazy shit in all, in all these adventures, most adventures have at least one really strange thing. We don't test how they interact with items from past adventures. So when you have one thing that was in this one context put in this completely different context, things can go nuts. So you never know what's going to happen, what players can be aware of, how they can see, how they can explore. So putting these strange things in these out of the way areas, of course you don't have anything necessary to complete the adventure, in such a place, but you put these little bonus things in there just to see what happens if anyone finds them. And you can find out, well, how did they get in there? Oh yeah, well, they were in the passage off to the side there going the other way and cast the clairvoyance spell, and then whoa, there's a hidden room. You never know. And because you never know, and as a writer, what good are these things if you can't be a little bit self-indulgent and putting in little fun bits? It's, you're not writing VCR instructions. This is how the adventure works. First, press power. Or first, plug it in. No. First, take it out of the box. Don't eat the styrofoam. Don't put the plastic bag over your head. You got to have fun with these damn things when you're making them, because they're intended to be fun. So things written in the spirit of fun, even if they're not of immediate use, I choose to believe that's going to connect with the imagination of the reader and be beneficial to the whole, even if, this half of a page isn't strictly very likely to come up in 99 out of 100 run-throughs of the adventure.
And I encourage anyone who wants to see how the adventure can go differently to cross over it with the deck of weird things, because I did it twice, and
yeah,
deck totally changed the outcome of the adventure.
Yeah. As well it should. There's no point in that book if it doesn't do that occasionally.
Yeah, it's amazing what can players do when suddenly, when they are naked, they can be invisible. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's I really did rip off Mystery Man. That's but it's like I think I wrote in the introduction to that book, even when I used to just play very just straight Dungeons and Dragons, I would always make sure that a deck of many things ended up somewhere that the players can get their hands on, just because that introduced such chaos into the game. There's no planning your campaign tightly at all once you put that in. And it's my play style that I'm going to put it in. Same thing with the deck of weird things. It's the same principle. This is going to be, this is going to make your game more fun and going to ruin any pretense you have of having a planned, plotted campaign. Your campaign is going to be a string of things that build on what happened last adventure, and not what you think is going to happen 5 sessions from now.
Yeah, and I have to say, when I was using tech in my campaign, it was this piece of chaos inside that players had. It was really exciting that players had this this deck that they could use anytime they wanted to screw up everything. And basically, I remember like in the middle of the dungeon crawl, they were like, when they were having a tough time, somebody said, "Hey guys, how do you think about playing cards right now?" And suddenly, boom, 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 some superpowers, some debuffs from them, but overall, like they started to sometimes one of them looked like a mutant after a few games. So. So, but yeah, really fun to have this out of your control part, like totally out of your control, because even they don't know what will happen.
Hey, well, the referee should be playing the game the same way the players are. They've got more information, but they shouldn't know the outcomes any more than the players should.
Yeah. So again, overall, this is a great product. I really like it, and my players also. I asked them before this interview what they think about the deck, and they told that this is a really amazing item, and we use it twice in one of our campaign, and once I gave them this deck when running the Cool Chateau, and they both times they told that really great. So yeah. Okay, so also about adventures, I also wanted to ask. This is something that you partially answered. That will we get some more adventures from you in the nearest future?
Eventually, I really got to get the ref book finished and out. But yes, there will be more from me, definitely.
So you're not only so you will definitely publish something from you, not only being the publisher.
Yeah. That's I'm not completely deactivated as a writer. That's Can't promise any timelines, of course. If that's one thing I've learned over the past 12 years, promising timelines just makes everybody.
So. Is it fun for you? For you, like designing an adventure right now, after all these years running a RPG company?
The designing is the actual sit down and writing it part. There's always something else to spend your time on business-wise. You can still feel like you're working instead of doing the actual grunt work of putting one word after the other. And I've tried all sorts of tricks to move me along faster. I mean, I've got projects that have all of the art completed. I have it formatted and outlined, and so it's like, okay, this page is going to have this information, and I just need to get it done. And but I could be like, oh, maybe I'll just do this month's VAT stuff now. Yeah. It's working. It needs to be done.
Yeah, and a backup question for this: has running an RPG company killed some joy in you? For example, in overall hobby.
Yes, but that has more to do with the online interactions.
Okay.
Because when you're not a publisher, then all of your interactions online are social. When you're an RPG publisher, especially when you're a full-time publisher, every public, or especially public interactions, but even private, there's this thing in the back of your head. It's like, don't say that. That'll be bad. It affects how you interact online, because everything you say, it's not just you. It's going to represent your company. Yeah, and that's less fun. As far as and then it's difficult to get into other games because you buy a game that looks interesting, and then you're like, well, when am I going to play this? When I play stuff, it should be whatever stuff needs play testing or stuff that I should do for the business. Sitting down and playing is not that much of a problem if someone else is running the game. But as far as me running something, you have limited opportunities to run things. And so when you do, you want it to count towards, the things that you need done. Oh, I need to test this. So I'm thinking of putting this rule thing here. I got to test that out. So I'm not going to play something completely different. So that's kind of a bummer. I remember going to this one convention or one meetup. This was years ago. I was excited to go because it was more of a story games kind of thing. And I was showing up, it's like, okay, I'll get to play something completely different than what I do. I'll just be able to sit there and relax. But no, I show up and it's like, oh, it's James Raggi from Lamentations. Oh, please play us some Lamentations. We don't do it. I'm like, oh, fuck.
You need to have this mask with this mustache and this nose, and maybe people won't recognize you.
Yeah.
So, do you play the adventures from other people that you are publishing? Like, are you playtesting there, or sometimes like you publish some adventure and think, hey, that's a cool one, I want to run it?
Very rarely do I play stuff by the other writers.
Okay.
That's the truth. Some of the stuff, it's weird because obviously all of the writers have their own styles. And I'm more likely to take little bits and pieces than to run things complete and wholesale.
Okay.
So yeah, it's the writers are in charge of, organizing their playtests with their groups, which, if if I was a large company with a big budget, then I would send out packs to, street teams that would, get independent playtest stuff. But even that, if I had all those resources and time and energy to organize that starts feeling to me like test audiences for movies, where then you start saying, oh, test audiences didn't like that, so you'll have to change this ending, creator. So again, as long as the play test reveals that the adventure can work, that's enough for me. There should be no guarantees. It should be possible for players to gunk up an adventure beyond all recognition. That should always be possible. So trying to play test an adventure so tightly that you're going to have the pre-programmed theme park ride is bad design, is bad practice and policy.
Okay, so sticking to playing, I also wanted to ask, like, because you're in the market we have like 2021, almost 2022, so let's say 12 years right now, or 13 running. You are in the hobby, obviously, much longer, but do you still enjoy like playing RPGs? Do you run your, I don't know, weekly or monthly game or something like that?
Okay. Well, it's of course been a lot
Harder.
Not very much at all during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because I can't stand online games. And and then I suppose like I could have played a lot more than I have during the pandemic, but I just remember before the pandemic there'd always be that player that shows up and I'm like, okay, how much of a, and so I start worrying about that, because generally I'm not COVID paranoid, but then there's just situations it's like, okay, that would just be begging to get it. So but of course, so like during the pandemic, I mean, yeah, I mean, none of my stuff got through, to be in this except for the one reprint. And one of the things, it's like it needs more play testing, but that hasn't happened, so it can't get released. So, yeah. And then you keep thinking, okay, cases are going down, things are getting better. And then, oops, right now, yesterday was the highest new case count for the whole pandemic in Finland. They're just reintroducing a whole lot more restrictions, and then this new variant, this new Transformers variant, it's so much more contagious. And I can't get my booster shot because I know that the vaccines stop working as well over time, but then it's going to be the end of January until I can get my booster shot. There are no home tests anywhere to be found around here, all sold out. The pharmacies have the signs right on the door, and it's just like, oh, for fuck's sake. I'm just glad the film festival happened at the beginning of the month. That was freaky. That was the first full thing, because was it the opening night of Night Visions? It was it Titane, or how do you say that? It was the movie that won the big award at the Cannes Film Festival.
I don't know which one.
Yeah, it's about a serial killer who fucks cars. That's what the movie's about. That's not the plot of the movie. That's the main.
Okay, I think I heard it. Yeah, I heard.
Okay,
about
so
the plot.
So when they showed it, that was the big opening movie of Night Visions. Big room, 550 seats. Every seat was filled, and it was the first time that I'd been in an actual crowd like that. And then I started getting paranoid. It's like, oh my god, I can feel the spike proteins just on my skin. Holy shit. I still showed up for the rest of the festival, so it's like I worry about it, but then I still go out and do stuff anyway. Like, yeah, we're getting into COVID talk now. Sorry, but it's just one thing I noticed today. All these new restrictions about bars and restaurants, their capacities and their opening hours. I went to the grocery store earlier today. Everybody fucking packed in, and no vaccine passports, no social distancing, no capacity restrictions. And I was like, yeah, but you can't go and sit down in a bar if there are other people. It's like, oh boy. So.
Weird times. Someone should write an adventure about it. So, slowly wrapping up, I wanted to ask you, what's your personal favorite for this year's release?
Oh boy. Now you see, as a publisher,
all of them.
Yeah, there's that. It's like, okay, if I name one, everyone else is going to go, what the hell, man? But then there's also the issue of what looks appealing to me as, to potentially use in a game. Mm-hmm. And then there's, what's going to sell the most? That would very quickly become my favorite. I think the one that is going to get absolutely the most use in my games, the Staffordshire Trading Company, that's going to get a lot of background use, because that's who can't use a map once in a while. But I think I'm going to use the 6x6x6 book. That's going to go in standard as replacing the standard magic missile in all my games going forward. That's just happening.
Okay, so I can tell you that the map book is the most anticipated. I had the most questions when I got the new releases, the package. I had the most questions about this book, and also Terror in the Streets is very highly in demand. But my heart was broken when I saw this line on the map that Glen Seal, that like there is this map in the front that this John Williams travel, etc. And like Poland back then with Lithuania, it was one of the biggest country in the Europe, and it's like around it. And I was like, why not even once?
And as a publisher trying to like promote these things, it's like, it's been pointed out to me that Glen Seal's book, The Staffordshire Trading Company, Works of John Williams, it might be the most immediately useful work for the greater amount of people. That's the one. But to me, in what's it about, it's like I can say all these other things. Oh, this is about this, and this happens, and it's this stuff. But my brain just starts to break down. It's like, oh, it's maps.
Yeah, exactly.
and it's I don't have the.
And I also have to say that's very good work with the PDF, because all the hyperlinks and jumping from map to map is really, really nice.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's all Glenn.
Okay.
That's all Glenn.
Okay. So this, and last question would be, because slowly new stuff will be starting to be available also on the retail. Do you have any idea when it will be available?
The shipment should arrive at the U.S. warehouse in February.
Okay, and I think in Europe it's slowly starting to show up, right?
Yeah, some stores have ordered from me direct, so it's at a few web stores. You can always order stuff from the EU web store right now, and yeah.
Okay, so I think we can wrap it up. So James, if you could only in the end tell if people would like to have more Lamentations experience, what and where they can find it. Like there's a Facebook group, site, etc.
Yeah, for more discussions where people hang out and shoot the shit, there's the Lamentations of the Flame Princess group.
Yeah.
That's where the discussion
is. In the video description. I will.
Then there's the Lamentations of the Flame Princess official Facebook page and the Twitter. I use those mainly for raw promotion. The LOTFP blog, lotfp.blogspot.com. There's lotfp.com. And I have to update that front page with all these new reviews and everything that have come out. Yeah, it's I'm so horrible with the web. So horrible because I just like, oh, okay, just put it on Twitter and forget about it. And yeah, it's I used to have people that would do this web and promotional stuff for me, but they kept getting so much shit that they'll. You know.
I also think you have an account on Instagram, but I don't know if it's used anymore.
I can't even get into Instagram. Oh God. Technology hates me. I try to just go to an Instagram page and it tells me I'm locked out, and to use the Instagram app to quote try to get back into my account. It's like I'm just wanting to look at a page, and it's like I can't click on anything. It's like Instagram app. Can I not use the desktop browser? It's like what the? I use my phone as a pocket watch. That's basically what I use it for. I mean, I can't. I mean, half the stuff. I mean, it's an old Windows phone, so I can't even update the browser. Like on Facebook, it doesn't have. I can't use the chat. I can't. What else can't I use on there because it's an outdated browser? I can't look up my email on my phone because I go to my webmail site and it says outdated browser. How do I download the browser? Oh, well, do you have iPhone or Android? Well, neither. Fuck.
You also have a YouTube channel, I remember now.
Yes, I have a YouTube channel, and I keep trying to get people, because I don't want to be, no offense, don't just want to be the talking head saying,
no problem, no offense taken.
So I want to do like more skits, more entertainment related things, but so it's something that I'm not just feeding advertisement, there's hopefully some entertainment value in watching the videos. But getting people to commit and want to work with you and do stuff, and because it's like the same thing with a lot of the books. I'm working with a lot of these authors on a royalty basis. Yeah, we'll split the profits. It'll be the same thing. Yeah, we need to get the YouTube channel to 1,000 subscribers, and then we'll split whatever ad revenue comes in our videos. And the more we do, the more things. And the people who have aspirations to do that on YouTube aren't going to be my underling to do it. That's the problem.
Okay, but talking heads are very okay if you are a boring person. I consider myself a boring person, so that's why I do the talking heads. So. Yeah. Okay, so I think that's it. Thank you very much again for showing up, for having this conversation, and hopefully we are waiting for the referee book. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh God. Yes.